Hey, this is somebody that I absolutely thought you guys should know more about. Jitin and I have been co-conspirators at Infosys. Jitin was the last at Infosys, the head of financial services business for Europe. He was the guy that opened the first large deal for Infosys. He has got a lot of strings of wonderful successes to his credit. And Jitin sort of started on a totally different career after Infosys. He has started 3 new businesses, right? And basically, I want you to get into those 3 businesses and talk about what you're doing now, Jitin.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Rajiv. It's good catching up with you after all this while. I have a lot of fond memories of all the good things that we did together during our Infosys days. And very good to see you also launching into your own entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you.
So, since you mentioned these 3 businesses, let me just give you a quick synopsis of what we're doing. So, I really started off with this venture called Elpis, which is essentially a Greek word for hope.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea there was to try and use online social networking and mobile technologies and so on and so forth to create a platform which people could use to drive the environment and sustainability agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent the better part of the last 3 years to build that platform, and we've had some success with evangelizing it to the stakeholders in the market who are pushing that agenda, companies like UNEP and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But the environment market is obviously a very tricky one,
mm-hmm.
right? Even though there is a very broad consensus amongst the scientists as to what is the cause of global warming and what the solutions need to be, but the political will to do something about it is just lacking. So the market for carbon has really not taken off, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we realized as we were building the platform, even though I think the platform is absolutely brilliant, is that it's going to take a pretty long time for something tangible can actually be done,
Mm-hmm.
whether on the corporate side or on the individual side. And we have built a platform that can do both.
Mm-hmm.
Communities can come together and build community-specific agendas or plans in terms of dealing with issues. And we've actually gone beyond just the environment agenda
Mm-hmm.
into social issues like education, women's rights, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the specific carbon agenda is taking a little bit of time to take off. And so it's going to take a while before we start seeing some
Mm-hmm.
return and some serious impact getting created. So while we're doing that, one of the things that happened was that because we were spending a lot of time building the platform, so we had initially hired a company, a small technology company in India, to build the platform. And as usual, we're having a lot of delivery issues and quality issues and stuff like that. And then we eventually said, might as well have our own team rather than having these
Mm-hmm.
guys making a mess of or making a hash of our ideas. We're telling them what we want, but they were not able to translate it in the way that we wanted them to. So eventually one thing led to the other, and we ended up creating a company called Occam Technologies,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially a technology innovation company.
Mm-hmm.
And is specifically in the business of creating or leveraging technology to create business disruption,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is completely new business models or taking an existing business model and disrupting it using
Okay.
technology. And Elpis was therefore one of the first things that that company ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then now we've got about 3 or 4 different concepts that we're working on. One of them is a new advertising model. We're looking at a potential transformation of the way advertising is currently.
Wow. Okay.
The way the model works right now, the traditional model, which is basically broadcasting based, and then you've got the online model, which essentially Google invented.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a model which could potentially transform that.
Okay.
We're also looking very carefully at GPS-based mobile technologies, because I think location-based service is going to be a big
LBS
thing.
is obviously very hot.
It's big, and there's a lot of opportunity there, and we've
Mhm.
got a couple of very strong ideas
Mhm.
which we are building. In fact, we are about to launch our product in the GPS space, in the mobile location-based mobile services. It's called Mongo,
Very
which
cool.
is basically meat on the go, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're doing around that. We expect to actually launch that in a couple of weeks' time.
Very cool. Okay.
And then, of course,
So breaking news, guys.
yeah, kind of. I hope that all of you guys who are watching this are going to end up downloading Mongo onto your iPhone and onto your Android platforms and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. And so the idea there is to basically do what we call co-creation or co-innovation,
Uh-huh.
where I got this team of people who are basically thinking ideas, thinking
Mhm.
of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we built it up to a certain level, then we look for partners who are interested in coming on board as co-investors, the co-creators, bringing either capital or ideas or other kind of skill sets, so that we can then build it together.
Very cool.
So we are obviously not going to compete with the Infosys and the TCSs of the world. They are too big, but this specific area of co-innovation or co-creation, I think there is again a lot of potential. And we hope that Occam will become one of the leaders in that space. A pure innovation-based company. Actually, if you think about it, there is no company out there in the world which essentially is purely in the business of innovation. Obviously, companies do innovation within their businesses. Apple being a classic example, or if you take any of them, right? A lot of companies do a lot of innovation within their lines of business. But a company that is in the business of doing innovation on its own or in partnership with others is, as far as I know, there is no other example of a company that does that. So that's as far as Occam is concerned. Occam, by the way, is from Occam's razor, which is this, I think 15th or 16th century British philosopher who came up with this idea of
safety razor.
Is nothing but no, it is not. It's got nothing to do with the safety razor.
Oh, okay.
Occam was a philosopher, William of Occam.
Okay.
So Occam's razor is actually a philosophical construct,
I see.
which is essentially a fancy way of saying what is expressed in the KISS principle.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
So the idea being that of all the different ways of solving a problem, the one which has the minimum number of steps or the minimum number of assumptions is usually the best one or most optimal one. So the idea is cut through the complexity.
Got it.
Cut to the chase and those kind of things and bring it all together. So that's where we got that name from. Then of course I have Snipple Animation, which is where we're sitting right now. We're sitting in the studio of Snipple Animation here in India, which is essentially, as the name says, it's a content creation company. And as of now we are particularly focusing on animation. But then of course we are looking at other areas as well as we go along. We might end up in live action, and we might also look at interactive digital publishing, which is another big area that is coming up. So the way Snipple Animation is set up is that we have it's a UK based company, and we have a pre-production facility which we have built in the UK. Then we are building a CGI or 3D animation studio here in Bangalore, and we also have a 2D animation studio in Manila.
Very cool.
So it's basically set up in these three places. We are working on a variety of projects, mostly either feature films or TV serials, all of them either with European or US based partners. Most of these deals are deals that are constructed as co-production deals, where we are basically putting up some equity. We have a front end and we also have a back end equity, a percentage of the returns from the release of the movie and the merchandising and all of those kind of things. And most importantly, we are building our own IP. So we've got a team of writers and concept developers, creative guys, artists and stuff in the UK, and also we have some freelancers in the US who are working with my team to put together our own ideas.
So the John Lasseter of India, eh?
Well, I won't call myself a John Lasseter. I'd rather position myself as a Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, fair enough. Sorry.
But in order for a company like Pixar to take off, you needed to have a guy like Steve Jobs who had the vision and the drive and the passion to make it work. And he was also the guy who would kick butt. You need somebody in any organization to kick butt. So my job here is to really kick butt.
Very cool.
And in many ways, while Steve, it is completely ridiculous for anybody to even remotely try to compare themselves to Steve Jobs. But then, as they say, the only difference between a madman and a genius is success, right? So
it's so true.
So that's what it's all about. And I think Snipple is really doing extremely well. We've got deals with companies like Disney. We're doing a complete 52-episode TV show for Disney, which for a 2-year-old company is quite a big deal.
Fantastic,
And
absolutely.
we've got 8 deals that we've already done, 4 feature films and 4 TV shows. So it's going very well, and we've got some properties that we've built which are really looking good, and we are hopefully we'll be able to make some announcements
very cool.
Once we are able to tie with some broadcasters and get that on. Now, we're not an Indian company in the sense that we are not only India centric.
Yeah.
India is just another place for us. It's a very important place, and it's going to play a very strategic role in it. But it's going to be largely about 3D CGI animation in India, and having a pipeline that essentially is a best-in-class kind of a pipeline. So we get the best, in order to do pre and post-prod, the best artists and the best talent is still in the West, in Europe and in the US, basically LA and all those kind of places. CGI production, India is a good place. 2D animation, India is not a good place. So that's why. So even though there are companies in India who do 2D animation, but it absolutely sucks. Okay, nobody, no international producer who has any sense of what any sense of quality or the kind of stuff that they want to put out in the market is going to use an Indian company to do 2D animation. So with all those insights, that's why we went to the Philippines. We said, okay, where is the best place to do 2D animation? And we figured that Philippines is the best place, so that's where we set it up.
Okay.
So it's all best in class. We will do, different things in different places wherever it makes best sense to do.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff. I just loved your flow there. A couple of quick additional questions. So all of this is funded by you yourself? I mean...
No, it's not. I mean, obviously I have my money in it, in all of these ventures. But in each of these three, I've got a different set of investors who have come on board. So LPS has its own set of investors and it has its own board of directors. Snipple has its own team. And so does Occam. So I've intentionally tried to keep it that way. So I'm the only common denominator in all these things, as it were. And the idea is to try and keep these things distinct because we have very different agendas in all these three areas. Essentially, a lot of people ask me this, why the hell do you have three different companies going at the same time? It's not easy to do that. It's basically killing me. There's no question about it. I have absolutely no time for anything. My kids basically don't even know what I look like anymore. I hardly spend any time at home, those kind of things. So it's a price you pay for passion, right? The areas that I've ended up in are the areas that I feel strongly about, I feel passionate about. Otherwise, there's no point. You should never do something unless you feel passionate about it. Because ultimately, you spend 80-90% of your life and even more than that of your day-to-day time, especially when you're trying to set up something on your own. And if you don't enjoy doing what you're doing, if you don't completely believe in it, you're never going to succeed. And there's all kinds of skeptics and all kinds of people who don't really believe in you and all that kind of stuff. And you got to get the clients to believe in you, you got to get your partners to believe in you, you got to get your investors to believe in you, you got to get your employees to believe in you. So that is a huge amount of the work that, as an entrepreneur and as a leader you end up doing, keeping the team intact and getting them to believe. It's all about it's like religion, It's interestingly enough, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in religion per se, but essentially what I'm peddling is religion in a way, that believe in me. I'm Jesus. Believe in me.
Very cool. I don't know what the evangelist audience in the US will say to that, but nevertheless. Where's your robe, by the way?
Well, that's why I'm growing a beard. So at least there is some resemblance. Although Jesus is not my role model, I would say, so maybe, but even if you look at the young version of Steve Jobs, he looked like Jesus too, with his Jesus-like beard and all. So it all
interesting analogy. Excellent. Now, this brings us straight on to the next question, Jitin. So, what drives you? I mean, at Infosys itself, this was a guy that always was on the edge. Jitin would be the guy that could be relied on to make sure that we were pushing the absolute limits of what we were about, right? And, so what is it that pushes you? What motivates you? What are you about? I've been to Jitin's house, for instance, and he has got the most amazing collection of paintings that you've ever seen. When, Angels and Demons came out and we actually had an event in Rome, Jitin actually took a group of us together and we did an Angels and Demons tour of Rome. You remember that?
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Very long time ago, but we had really good time.
So, you got so many facets to your personality. Talk about what drives you.
Yeah, see, basically, that's a tricky one. And, let me put it like this. What drives me is, this might be a little bit controversial, but essentially, what really drives me is that I don't want to die. Okay, so they don't, as Woody Allen said, right? He said that I don't want to die by leaving a legacy behind. I don't want to die by not dying. But he was of course joking. We'll all end up dying in the end. The only way not to die in reality is to leave a legacy behind. So what if you really ask me to give you an honest answer about it? This might sound presumptuous and all that, but that's what drives me. It's not money, it's not fame. The only thing that drives me is to create impact and to leave a legacy, to create enterprises that will live on and on and on when I'm long gone. And that is really the drive. I think we are all in some form or the other driven by something similar. We may not always realize it, but I strongly believe that fear of death is the biggest fear in the world, and a lot of people admit it. Some people don't admit it. Various people deal with it in different ways, and I think for me, and I think that's true for many other people out there as well. Again, going back to Jobs, I keep talking about Jobs because he's probably the closest that somebody comes to being a role model. in some ways, because I actually operate like him. I'm a very difficult guy to deal with. Everybody hates me, right? The guys who work with me hate me in the sense that I'm tough to deal with because I push people very hard. I'm a perfectionist. I won't let something go out until I'm completely convinced that it has to be that way. You know how how Jobs ended up building the Mac and the iPhone and everything else. Basically, unless it were 100% right, exactly the way we wanted it to be, we would not release it. And that extreme perfection and the desire to create world-class properties, world-class products, makes a lot of people around you go nuts. And so that happens. And I think you can sustain that only if people also see that while you're pushing them hard, but you're actually taking them in the right direction. And those two things have to come together. If it is only one thing, then it will not work. So I think it's a combination of those kind of things. But it's the passion to create a legacy, a passion to create something that will last, and something that will have an impact, not just in terms of creating wealth, which is obviously an important thing for me and for other people around me, but more importantly to also have a positive impact on people around you. So, for me, content is in a way the creative side. I've always believed that I had a creative streak to me, even though I ended up doing engineering and ended up doing finance and ended up becoming a banker and then ended up in technology.
I am
all
Calcutta.
The kind of things, all the kind of things that you can imagine are the
Citibank.
Doing banking, doing technology, services, everything that is as far away from creativity as you can possibly imagine. But I always believed that there was a creative streak in me. I've written a few books and stuff like that, although I've not yet published them, but I've never had the time to do that. 10, 12 years ago, I came very close to setting up a live action film company. In fact, that company still exists as a legal entity, but we never really took it forward. So there was that creative streak. And that also, by the way, explains all those paintings that you were talking about. So Snipple animation, in a way, is my attempt to create world-class content.
Fantastic. And one last point.
Sure.
So if there's a message for those people that are yearning to get out of their corporate skins and do something different and interesting, what would your message to them be?
Well, look, I mean, at the risk of sounding pedantic, essentially, I have come across hundreds of people, maybe even more than that, who keep telling me that they will one day give up their corporate careers, get out of the rat race, and they will do something on their own. But we are going to take X number of years to, make so much money and get so much of security and those kind of things. That's all nonsense, right? If you really have the spark, you have to follow that passion. Most of the people who don't take the leap, don't take the leap because they don't believe in what they themselves think they believe in. That belief has to come really from deep inside you. It has to be a drive. It has to be madness. It has to be insanity. Unless you have insanity, you're not going to do it. And you have to be insane, really, literally. I mean, you really have to be insane to do this because you end up making so many sacrifices. Your quality of life takes a big hit. Wife and kids, all the stuff that they want out of life, they have to. It's not just you making the sacrifices; the entire family is making the sacrifices. So that trade-off, a lot of people would argue, why would you do that, right? By the time, even if all of these things take off, by the time they take off and they start returning, making a return, then you can have a good life. By the time, the best years of your life are already gone. So you can only make that sacrifice or that trade-off if that is not even a trade-off in your head, because you are driven by a certain germ of insanity that is driving you from deep inside. And if you have that, it'll come out. Look at Mr. Murthy with Infosys. That passion to make that sacrifice. You can see even after all these years, 25 or 30 years since he started the company, you can still, every time you talk to him, you can still see that he still has that same passion.
Totally.
So that's what it is all about. So you have to find that inside you, and then you have to go for it, because at the end of the day, what I keep telling everybody is that all of you guys have some, fantastic resumes and stuff. There is no reason for you to be afraid of what will happen. The safety net is already there.
Insurance policy is already there.
Just
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Totally.
So,
Brilliant, Jitin, and I think in the spirit of evangelism, amen to that.
Thank you very much.